Trivia. Let's get to it. Before we bring our guest up tonight, again, a show of hands, who had never seen the film before? Okay. Who was seeing it for sort of an extraordinary number of times? Like, what would you say? Anyone like close to 10 times? Am I more than 10? Wow. Okay, perfect. So let's start. How are we doing down here? You guys good? Oops, sorry. We're really excited tonight. Wong Kar-wai was once asked what it's like to work with musicians and singers as actors. He said, I hate calling them singers. I refer to them as exceptional personalities. Ooh. Yeah, fancy. Well, we have an exceptional personality here with us tonight. She chose In the Mood for Love. She's not only an exceptional personality, she's a T-1000 series Terminator.
Yeah.
And she's my #1 crush, certainly. Shirley Manson, everybody. Shirley Manson.
Yeah! Welcome.
Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me. This is a big honor for me. So,
why so? I mean, you were really, just meeting you tonight, you were almost self-conscious about being here in the sense of, wow, why would you ask me? Why is this so, why is that so extraordinary to be talking to movies?
Well, because, you know, I'm not a movie buff. I'm sure every single person in this room probably knows more about movies than I do.
Sorry, we're just going to move that a little closer. He doesn't bite.
No, I know.
Hard.
I can tell.
Yes.
I can handle it. So yeah, and I also think that students are your, fiercest critics. Usually, they're the first to tell you you're full of bullshit. And,
like kids, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I don't see it that way. I just feel like when you're learning about something, you are probably at your most knowledgeable in a funny way.
Yeah. Seeing the film tonight, what was your experience seeing it?
I mean, I think you'd be hard-pressed to see a more beautiful movie.
Yeah.
I think every single frame looks like a photograph or a painting. And I think it's extraordinary. Sometimes when you pin your flag to something, you think, oh God, did I choose the right movie? Am I insane? Because it's been a while since I saw it.
Yeah.
But I think it's absolutely exquisite. And I think it's like haiku in a funny way. It's like a movie version of haiku.
It's a beautiful metaphor. How so? I mean, the precision of a haiku, the kind of defined pattern of a haiku. Well, why does haiku jump?
Well, I think because of the lack of dialogue. I mean, it's very sparse.
Yeah.
And I think the movie really, it's all about what's not being said for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's a profound rumination on unrequited, not just love, but things that you want in your life and things that you desire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that you ultimately have to pass through.
Do you recall when you first saw it? Did you see it in the cinema, or had someone sort of slipped it to you? How did you first experience it?
No, nobody slipped it to me.
I didn't know the verb. Like in gym class, slipping. That
maybe wasn't the right choice of verb.
Right? Yes. I'm not that hip. Believe me. When were you first introduced to the film?
I think I saw it in Madison, Wisconsin, whilst we were making a record. And I think I went to the cinema. In fact, I know I went to the cinema to watch it.
Oh, cool. Why? Were you drawn to it as in and of itself, or was someone sort of...
I was a sucker for the trailer. I remember seeing the trailer and hearing the Yuji's theme.
Yeah.
And just going, wow, that looks incredible. I want to go and see that. So,
The trailer's kind of hypnotic. I mean, trailers are, but this one especially is really beautifully tailored.
Yeah, I mean, clearly he's an aesthete, and the people he works with, clearly he's surrounded himself with geniuses. I mean, the director of photography, the lighting,
right,
the styling of the movie, the art direction, they're all beautiful, pristine, well thought out, and perfectly executed. And that's rare, I think.
The harmony of all the elements.
Yeah, I mean, it just blows my mind to look at that. How they have taken everything she's wearing and then made sure that everything in the background, all the walls are painted a certain colour.
Yeah.
All the props are like highlighting one another. If you see a painting of apples, there's a beautiful bowl of apples beneath it, and it's matched to a T. I mean, the precision is insane.
What about those dresses?
I want every single one.
Yeah. I feel you'd say that. Have you ever worn a piece like that? Of that, because I know Maggie's remarked how tight it was and immobilized her in many ways. I'm sure you've worn similar dresses, but have you ever worn that sort of piece?
No, but I use it as a reference a lot. And in fact, for the first single of our newest record, I kept saying to the woman I was working with, I want a dress that looks like it came from In the Mood for Love.
Wow.
And she did an amazing job. She made me this incredible dress that looks almost like it was out of In the Mood for Love, except it's not tight, it's loose, because I like to move. I don't like to be restricted.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Maggie, who I've been able to swap emails with, she's really cool about talking about this film, because I think there were some barriers, and the dress was one of them. She also talked about the hair, that style of hair. She said it took 3 to 5 hours a day to create that hair.
Well, again, I assume it was a directorial choice
Yeah.
to have her in very restrictive, conservative,
Yeah.
sort of repressed clothing, hairstyle, particularly, you set it, I think, in 1962 when the movie opens.
Right before the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah, and at a time when, if in America, when everybody was getting really, or something his wife was doing at the time, and he has this incredible home and incredible studio there.
Like a guitar on his lap, and he kind of plays.
Yeah, and he has very distinct ideas about what he wants to do with music and
Yeah.
how to do it. And
Yeah. We talked earlier, and we'll definitely get to questions. We talked earlier about, I need a personal person like that. Why don't I have a no, it's okay. I need it. It's okay, I'll figure it out. Let's talk a little bit about Karwai, and we were talking about him and music. In the Mood for Love is kind of a tip of the hat to Brian Ferry, who did a cover that Karwai loved. As Tears Go By is another Karwai film, and he uses musicians a lot as actors. We'll talk about musicians as actors, and then vice versa. By and large, do you think there's something about being in the world of music that predisposes an artist to being a good actor?
no,
Okay, next question.
absolutely not.
Well, then, let's take best case scenario, and then we'll name some names. Let's take best case scenario. What could potentially help being a musician as an actor? Is there anything kind of in the plumbing of that could predispose one?
Well, could be very flippant, but I think to be a great musician, you have to be willing to be very honest about yourself, about what you want, about your life and your fear. And I think that's what makes a really great musician. And I think for some actors, that can be very difficult.
Yeah.
To be honest with themselves, because I think they feel they have no sense of self. So how can I be honest if I don't know who I am? I think that can be a problem for actors.
It's beautifully said.
And musicians, by the way.
Well, it's beautifully said. I was thinking about David Bowie, and I know Bowie's been a musical influence of yours, and I find him to be an extraordinary actor. I mean, I know he doesn't do it as much anymore. Bowie and Mick Jagger, and are there favorite musicians as actors, or people you've seen, wow, that's a really great turn?
Well, I thought Diana Ross, for instance, in Lady Sings the Blues, was unbelievable.
Totally curse.
But unbelievable performance by a musician. Bette Midler in The Rose, another fantastic performance, raw and brave and ugly, And I think...
We're sick of Bjork, and we were talking about Dancer in the Dark earlier. Did you see Dancer in the Dark?
I have seen Dancer in the Dark.
What do you think about Bjork in that film?
It's difficult to say because I felt the material was so hard, and she has such a huge persona that I find it hard to divorce myself from her persona. Now, if I went back and watched the movie now, maybe I'd feel differently, but at the time I'm a huge Bjork fan.
Yeah.
So I find it difficult to really pull myself out of, wow, that's Bjork on the screen, So it's interesting. I would like to actually revisit that.
Would you jump in with an auteur, I hate the term, but like Von Trier or Karwai, sort of blindly? Would you want to know the material? I mean, you told me secretly you're not a film buff, but your taste is extraordinary. You love cinema. Would you work with a Karwai as an actor?
yeah, I'd give myself up to him completely. Now, Lars von Trier, I don't know so much. I'd need to know material. My husband might divorce me.
Could have a part as well.
Yeah, I just imagine he'd have me doing some, you know, like full-on anal, you know.
That's actually the title of his next film.
I don't know if I could handle that.
We pay to see it, though. With all due respect, sir. Let's talk about Cartwright, because Cartwright throws a couple of curveballs at actors as well. What if you're jumping on the set and Cartwright says, I don't know, Shirley, figure it out? I mean, you're kind of... You have to give yourself over to that aesthetic process.
Okay, well, you know, who knows how you would deal with it in situ, but I will say this. I came off the road I was a musician since I was 15 years old. When I was about 43, I came off the road because, for a lot of different reasons, but I took acting class. I did a TV series. I played a robot in a TV series, and I wasn't that good, but I did slowly learn.
Really kick ass.
Well, I got better,
okay.
and I learned a lot. You know, I mean, you've got to remember I'd done nothing, so I was learning on the spot, and it was scary. But I felt I had nothing to lose, and so I did the TV show, and then I decided, okay, this kind of intrigued me. I'm now going to go and sign up for a class. So it was a class much like this. It was in a theatre much like this with an amazing teacher who taught me basically about art and about being an artist. And she took me from someone who was very accomplished and had received a lot of praise as a singer, as an entertainer, and took me to being somebody who knew nothing, yeah, and not feeling ashamed about knowing nothing. And then slowly taught me, you know, how to be an artist and how to be brave and be willing to fail. And when I got to that point in class with my fellow students, I realized that I had taken a huge leap as an artist, and I would be willing probably to go in and try and figure something out.
Well, not only is that eloquent, I mean, that's brave. I think the bravery was stepping through the door. I mean, you found a deeper bravery, but I think to do that is extraordinary.
Well, I think it was quite brave. Looking back, I actually do think it was brave. I wasn't brave at the time. I was very scared. I mean, my husband will attest to it. I used to come home and I'd be in floods of tears and say, I suck at this, and I'm embarrassed, and there were people in the class who knew who I was, and I was really embarrassed, and, you know, and then slowly all that sort of nonsense, some idea I had of myself as an artist, broke down, and it just fell to the floor. And she said to me, you know, you've got to stop thinking of yourself as who you were, and just be who you are now, yeah, and take chances and take risks, and you've got to trust that your fellow actors or your director, they'll help you figure it out. You know, have faith in the whole system in which you find yourself.
Do you still feel you want to act? Do you want to continue to act?
I would love to. I don't know if I will have the opportunity to do it again. You know, it was so bizarre that I got that chance in the first place. It really was one of these random, I was at a Hollywood party, and I met a scriptwriter who was working on the Black Dahlia at the time. And I was a huge James Ellroy freak, like freak, you know. And I heard that he was working on this script, and I'm kind of usually quite shy at these Hollywood parties because I always think people are so full of bullshit, you know, and they're like, everyone's all, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and you know, I can't be bothered with it. But I was like, I have to talk to you, you know, I need you to tell me, I hear you've met James Ellroy. So he told me this whole story about James Ellroy, and then he was just like, you know, I think you'd make a great robot. Really? Yeah, that's cool. He went, would you think about being in my TV show? And I kind of went, yeah, cool, thinking it would never come to anything. I went away. About a year later, he called me up and he said, you need to come in and audition. And I've never been so nervous in my life.
Well, and that's an actor's terror. So it was an audition process.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't essentially offering a role.
No, I had to audition 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Because, you know, it goes up in rungs.
Yeah.
You know,
you meet with fewer and fewer people. Or more,
yeah, but the more and more powerful they are until there's one man in a room like this, and you're sitting by yourself. It's kind of crazy.
It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. Talk a little bit about, before we get to questions about your videos, and I always wonder about this philosophically. You being in a video, is that acting?
Yeah.
Can you just find that? I've had musicians in that chair say no, that it's something else. How do you or retrofit it into acting?
Well, again, you know, as I have said many times, we like to look at making videos as making mini films. That's just how we like to go about it. And
we being the band.
The band,
Yeah.
yeah. And we've been very lucky in that we've worked with a few directors, most notably Sophie Muller, who has made every single video that you've probably ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
She and I became fast friends, and I have worked with her non-stop really since we worked in, I think, together in 1999. Yeah. And she herself, her father was a scriptwriter and a playwright, and she's a film buff, you know. So we always like to approach things as that, you know, let's give a little nod to this, or let's give a little nod to that, and we have great fun, and we're like witches when we're putting storyboards together. And you know, that one in particular that you just saw, was our little Hitchcock moment when the bird like shadow at the door, you know, at the window. It's like we were cackling with glee, you know, this is so funny, we can just shove this in. And, you know, it's like playing, you know, it's like being a child.
Well, aside from, you know, the paper dolls of it all, you're acting though. Is this a role?
In some cases, I think, depending on the material, you know, yeah.
And what about being on stage? Is that akin to a performance? I mean, there's the musical performance, but the persona of Shirley Manson when you step to the mic.
No, I feel like when I play, I am the biggest, bravest, most creative version of myself. Like my best self is when I'm on stage. And I don't think it's a performance or play acting or playing a role. I feel like I have a need as a singer to connect with an audience. I think any artist does that, you know. And when you're most successful at it, you're connecting with other people, that you kind of create this world in which you all share the same kind of values within reason and a version of the world as you see it.
Well, you know, a cheap description of acting is, you know, it's not putting something on, it's taking something off. So it feels like when...
Well, again, in class, I think acting is being your most honest self and your most unique self. But I think that's a challenge when you're most often using other people's words. And so it's how do I take my best, real, honest, brave self and match that with somebody else's words.
Well, just as we get to questions, funny, Tony Lung's talked about Carwai's process, about not knowing anything. He said, it's easy for me. I just relax and be myself. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something about the connection between not having something to memorize or a persona to affect that frees his actors.
Well, that, again, I think people think, oh, to be yourself is so easy. Yeah. And again, in class, this was something that we all learned by watching each other, is when other people are looking at you, it is so hard to be real. Because you're thinking, wow, can that guy in the front row see up my skirt? Can he see up my skirt?
No, you're
or,
good.
You know, is the girl over there judging me because I'm not smart enough or I'm not articulate enough? You know, all this is coming at you as you're in front of an audience. And so, subconsciously or not, and I think, so to be, like that performance by Tony is insanely beautiful and so sort of just heartfelt and, again, incredibly restrained. You know?
This film redefines acting. I mean, to ask an actor to physically freeze. I mean, I can't recall a film, you know, that Fassbender used to do that, but, you know, when he's in the hallway walking, he's literally frozen.
It's not done on film?
It's not a freeze frame.
Wow.
It's not a freeze frame.
That's a strange choice, though, right? It's all this, the whole film has got all these funny little choices all the way through it.
Yeah.
And the physicality of the actors is
That's
incredible.
The key. He kept telling them body language and physicality expressed through that. He said this film is a tango, and that's the Nat King Cole stuff, you know, and all the beautiful kind of tango-ish play.
The way she uses her body and
the way she walks up the staircase.
Yeah, and then the scene, you know, when they first get together and they're figuring out the first time when they're play acting, they imagine a scene between their partners, and then they walk off together and they're absolutely, completely in step. You know, it's all these tiny little choices that are, and all within this claustrophobic, tiny screen. You know, you don't see anything beyond the claustrophobic kind of room that they're in. It's all squelched.
All within an hour and a half. And this was also part of Carwai's treatise. a great film should be an hour and a half. And I thought about it as a
Really?
song, almost, with all due respect, almost as a pop song. You know, there's always, I would imagine you've experienced the...
3 minutes 54.
Right, the kind of like getting down to that top. Yeah, no, I mean, there's this knee-jerk response in terms of pop songs, must be under 4 minutes.
Interesting.
And Karwai takes it to film. Hour and a half is the quintessential length. So these boundaries can be helpful. These boxes can be helpful.
Of course, for
Yeah.
everything. And also, if you don't have a genius like him at the helm, it can also be dreadful.
You're doing okay. Questions for Shirley about the film, about other stuff? Yeah, right in front.
So I think that
I'll try to repeat some of this for everybody. Go on.
I'll try to talk loud. Okay. Oh. So I think that a lot of us think, sometimes myself included, that art is creativity without rules and often without boundaries. And this film is an example of how rules can not only be helpful but necessary in the creative process. And I think as a director, this it kind of sets him apart in that he becomes a storyteller through these rules. And it sets directors like himself and Sophie Mahler apart because they tell these stories through a set of rules.
Right.
Do you find that rules are necessary for your creative process? And if so, do you have specific rules or do they change with each piece?
I think you'll find, just as in any art form whatsoever, there are rules, unfortunately. You know, to think that there are no rules is incredibly naive. No matter, you know, they may not be within the piece of work itself. It may not. There may be no rules. You know, like Lars von Trier, I'm sure they come to set and they figure stuff out and they just fly by the seat of their pants. But then they will meet rules when they meet the studio, or when they meet the public, or they meet the publicity department. You know, there's just rules everywhere, unfortunately. And I think your role as an artist is to, like, how can I be the best artist I can be within the rules and parameters that I'm going to be given on any given day, and they shift like crazy, you know, no matter what you're doing.
It brings something out, you know. I always think James Cameron, you know, let's say Jim Cameron's film cost $300 million. I'm sure at some point he wanted $400 million. There's not a filmmaker in the world who doesn't get less, or an actor. You know, it's part of the craft.
You always get less.
You always get less.
Always, always, always.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Ask for more, expect less. Right in the corner there, yeah.
So I saw that in the movie, the first, when the main character, the woman, was asked her name, she says, "My husband's name is."
Right.
So did you feel something about how the woman is constrained and all the time she's being given orders, or she's supposed to be led by a man, or like the main character was saying, oh, the man has to be the one who leads first.
Right, this sort of cultural, the
or
gender politics
or
of it.
societal, I think. There's
Yeah.
a lot of societal reins on her. I mean, she's very aware of what people are thinking about her. You know, what I think, or at least my interpretation of it, is that she wants to be with Tony Leung. I mean, I would. She wants to be with him at the end of the movie, you know, but she can't let herself go there because of what people might think.
Yeah.
And she lets this incredible person go because she's so, you know, repressed.
I noticed that this time she's devastated by losing him. I mean, I guess it really clicked here for me that she really wanted to be with him, and she just didn't. You know, it's a beautiful story. I mean, on the sense of an emotional story, it's a love story.
Well, it's an unrequited love story, yeah. I mean, it's much like Casablanca, right?
Yeah.
You know, like all these great love movies where it's chaste.
Right.
And that's what makes it sort of powerful.
Right. Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet.
Right in the back, yeah.
Hi, Shirley.
Hi.
So I know that you mentioned once that you wrote Man on a Wire inspired by a documentary of the same name.
I did, yeah.
Are there other films or other directors that have influenced songwriting?
Oh my God, now you've put me on the spot. I'm sure there probably is. I mean, you know, I'm like a magpie. I always sort of pull ideas and things from books and movies. I'm ashamed to say I'd have to really think about that question. I'm sure there probably is, but right now, under the spotlight, I can't, for the life of me, think about one.
Well, as the other question surfaces, I just have a quick question. What about actors as musicians? what's worse, an actor is a musician is a bad actor, or is an actor is a bad musician? I was thinking of some. It goes both ways, you know. Are there, when you see an actor try to work in your field, does that raise the hair in the back of your head?
Occasionally, you know, because that's my first and foremost love. It's what I've done since I was a kid, since I was 15. And so, yeah, your bullshit detector is that much higher, you know, because you know every nuance of, you know, the work, the business, the life, everything about it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you will see, I mean, it's difficult for me to watch anything to do with music that's acted unless it's done incredibly well.
Yeah.
And some people do. I mean, some people do
both.
miraculous at it.
You know, I was thinking, this is the opposite. I was thinking Courtney Love. I think she was a great actor. I mean, when she's been in that position, she was People versus Larry Flint. She's amazing in that, I think.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of great actors who have played musicians. You know, like.
Do you want to do a little name association? I have a few to throw at you.
Okay.
Okay. Russell Crowe.
Well, I just think of Gladiator.
With a guitar.
Yeah, with a guitar. Well, yes, I had a huge crush on him in Gladiator, and then I heard about his 30 feet of grunt.
Something odd foot of grunt or something.
Yeah, and I just drew the line at that. You know what? He's got the wrong hair to be a musician. He's got really bad hair. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, he's got a funny, I mean, and I don't mean this with disrespect. He's just not cut out to be a musician. He's too burly and he's got bad hair.
Okay. Jared Leto.
Now, he is amazing. And he started out as an actor and I was full of scorn when I heard that he had his band called, 30 Seconds to Mars. I was totally like, well, God, that's going to be great. And he is, a phenomenal actor, and he is a legit musician, for sure.
Juliette Lewis.
Amazing. I think she's amazing on both fronts. Now,
That's
there's a perfect example of, she is a phenomenal rock star. She does it right. Because she feels it in her. Again, she's a very honest person, though, brutally honest to a fault sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think it's her honesty that she brings with her to the stage, that both in her acting and in her musicianship.
I think that was pretty fair. 2 out of the 3 were quite.
Yeah, they're good. They're getting better too. I think there's more and more sort of crossover now.
Yeah.
I think the media will allow you to do more now, rather than just saying, well, you should stay here in your box and you should stay here in your box. And people love to keep you in your box, be warned.
And the industries are being pulled down towards the drain, so to say, of the internet in a sense. They're becoming similar industries in that way. They're more autodidactic, they're more DIY in a weird sense.
In a weird way, I guess.
They're unified like never before, to be continued. Other questions for Shirley?
That's the first time I saw the movie. So, when I was watching the movie, I was like, it's almost like a garbage song, in terms it has different layers of points of view and how they found out that they were cheating on each other. How do you do that in your music? Because that's what I've always loved about your music. There's different points of view when you listen to lyrics and how they combine. How does that writing process work for you guys? Well, how does that mostly every garbage song there's more than one way to listen to it? That's what I really.
Well, I mean, I guess some of that is my inability to be. Over the years, my inability to be really honest. If I'm going to be frank, I would say that's probably my own weakness as a writer, because I've tried to not be as honest as I probably should. Particularly maybe in the first record, I would put another story in with another story, just to sort of fog the truth in a way. But one of the reasons I was so attracted to this movie is because the themes are very much my themes, about how difficult it is for us as human beings to be verbal about what we want. How do we get what we want? How do I be an upright, good person, not hurt anybody but still follow my own desires in life? How do I, a lot of it's to do with subterfuge and secrets and not being straight with one another, and I feel and probably everybody in this room has experienced people not telling you the truth for whatever reason. Sometimes you hope that they'll tell you the truth, sometimes you demand they tell you the truth, sometimes they don't tell you the truth, and you have to navigate that in your life Because sometimes you know it's too painful for people to tell you the whole truth. And you just have to accept that this is too hard for them to be honest with me, but I know they're not being honest with me, and how do we have an authentic connection? It's, you know, I guess that's why I'm so attracted to this movie.
It's a wonderful thing about film and music and other arts, but we see them differently at different times in our lives.
Absolutely.
And it feels like you're reflecting on this film in this moment of time in your own, for your own truth. And that's
My
wonderful.
favourite movie story of how we see movies differently at different times was, I went to see Top Gun when it first came out. This is an absolute true story. And I came home and I said to my little sister, you've got to go and see Top Gun. It's fucking amazing. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not a deep film, but it's fucking great.
It's not.
And she said, oh, okay. So then she went away to see the movie and she came back. She went, you're out of your tiny mind. What is wrong with you? And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then, of course, I went and saw it a few years later and I was like, wow. What was I thinking? You know? So it just depends on the mood you're in sometimes.
It really
you know.
does. You know, and we'll remember things differently. It's not just the emotional thing. It's literally... It's so suggestive. Movies play on your subconscious.
Yeah, I mean, this movie in particular, and I think this is again why I picked it, is nowadays I feel like we're all in such a rush, you know. We're looking at the TV and we're on our Facebook and we're also tweeting with our pals and we're Facebooking and, you know, doing FaceTime and whatnot. And I just think what's so beautiful about this is it forces you really to, like, to take your blood pressure down and focus on what is happening on the screen. And it's really rare that you see something that patient, you know, and it requires us to plug into it, and I think that is also really powerful.
A few more questions, right in the middle, dead center, yeah. Did you see 2046?
I have not seen 2046. I have it on DVD and I've had it for about 2 years and I have not even had the time to crack it open.
This film started as 2046. His intention was to make 2046. And what's interesting, I was going to ask you, you know, he'll often start making a movie and then stop and make another. And it's something that filmmakers don't get to do because he's not working on.
He's got big balls, man. That is
yeah.
balls.
I've heard, yeah. Is that? I mean, it's funny. Musicians, I think, operate under different schedules than filmmakers, or is that a myth? Have you ever started an album with the group and then jumped off it and made another one? Because Kawhi has done that twice, very famously.
No, but it's a lot easier, you know, for musicians. We are more fluid. You know, you can start off writing one song and go, "This is shit. Let's move on to another," or
right.
Let's take the, you know, the middle break from this and squash it into this song and see where we get to. I mean, that's the one thing when I was doing the TV show, I couldn't believe how much it takes to make a TV show or a movie or what have you. I mean, it is on a whole different level of concentration, like artistry, but also how to manage all the people.
Yeah, it's like a battleship, and it's like steering a battleship, you know. But it's an interesting thing because Kawhi will stop a movie and start another one. It seems to be, I'm sure it drives people in his life crazy, but as you say, it's kind of what makes him what he is.
Yeah, doesn't Ang Lee do? I feel like I've read something that he's done something similar.
You know, Ang is more in a studio way now. So I think once he stopped doing the smaller films and larger ones, you really can't play.
No, of course.
You're not playing with house money anymore.
No,
you
you're
know,
not.
It's not your money.
It's not your money.
Gentlemen, right in front. A couple more questions.
Hi. I want to know, what advice do you have for young musicians who wish to achieve a life in music similar to yours?
Wow. You have to be tenacious. And you have to really find it in yourself. You have to have a reason, eventually, to be willing to stand up, regardless of what people think of you. That, I think, is probably your biggest weapon. I mean, obviously, you have to be musical. That goes without saying. Obviously, you have to have great material. You know, there's all these things, but I think, and I think this goes for anybody. I think if you make films, if you're actors, if you're musicians, if you're dancers, anybody in the arts, you just have to find it in yourself to be able to get knocked down and still be willing to stand back up, regardless of whether you get applause, praise, criticism, a punch in the face. You will find that no matter what happens in your career. You have to be willing to go, okay, I'm down on the floor again, and I'm going to stand back up because this is the air I breathe and I have to do this, or I'm going to die of unhappiness. You know, I'm not kidding. I really mean that.
You don't seem like you're kidding.
No. I think if that is...
No danger in that.
If you feel like that, then you know you're doing the right thing. If you don't want to pick yourself up from the floor because you're too prideful, then you're not supposed to be an artist, really. You're not cut out for it, you know. But I'm curious about why you asked about 2046.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. It's sort of the third part, actually. Days of Being Wild being part one. This is kind of part two, actually, strangely enough.
And did you like it? I mean, is
It's different.
It's worth the watch. If you're curious about it, it's worth the watch, yeah. It takes place in the future, and Maggie's in it in the flashback. It's definitely, should stay on your
But
queue.
really, is there a more beautiful film? I really can't think of another film I've ever seen that is that breath. I mean, literally, takes my breath away. Some of the shots, you know. And
Amazing. Corner in the front, since I insulted him earlier, and then we'll be done. First and second. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to go back to the boxes. Do you feel that women in music are still being constrained by the media and music industry in this bubbly pop, inoffensive box? And if so, how can they bust out of it?
well, I don't think it's the music business or the media per se. I mean, we all play our small roles, including probably all of us in this room. But yes, I feel like women are still expected to be, in the music industry in particular, they're expected to be as talented as their male counterparts. And they are also expected to be models, they're expected to be beautiful, they're expected to be young. And if they're not all these three things, you will take flack for it. End of story. You'll take flack for it. Or magazines will not want to cover your band, or you won't get the column space. And then once, I'm just trying to think of a random example. I did and this is when I was like, wow, women are really still in a box. Because I know that there's lots of very successful female pop stars out there. And that, arguably it's the most successful time for women in the music industry ever. They're all like huge stars and they're all dominating the charts. But I did a magazine shoot a few months ago. It was a front cover, and I got ready for the shoot, and I stepped on set, and there was a young girl there who was a liaison with the magazine, and she went, "Oh." And she went, "No, we can't have you with your hair like that." And I kind of laughed. I thought she was joking, And I was like, "Ha ha ha." And she went, "No, we won't, sorry, we will not run a photograph of you in our magazine looking like that." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Oh. And she went, "Yeah." And I was like, and I in my head, I was like, okay, I need to keep calm. I cannot lose my composure, or the whole day will be a shitty day for everybody. So I tried to be a lady about it, and I said, "Well, how would you like to see my hair?" And she said, "Well, I would just like to see your hair kind of like, just messy and just like you kind of just got fucked look." I'm sorry, you want me to look like I just got fucked? And she went, "Yeah, kind of beachy." At which point my manager said, "You do realise who you're talking to, don't you? She comes from Scotland. She's never been on a beach in her life." And, we kind of tried to make a joke of it, and we pushed back because I'm a hardcore motherfucker and nobody tells me what to do. And I'm not... I'm not playing a popularity contest, but I came home and I said to my friends, what makes me sad is there will be young artists, young female artists in exactly that same position, and they will fall under the weight of a magazine saying that to them. And that's when I really realized, wow, are you fucking kidding me? Is anybody saying that to Jack White? Is anybody saying that to Bono? Is anybody saying that to Justin Bieber even? I'd probably not. And so, until these expectations of how women look pass us by and we're just accepted as artists, I think women still have a long ways to go. And what's more worrying and maddening is that in the Western world, that's where the women have it best. Women in other cultures are really struggling, and that's something I want to always keep in the back of my head as a female artist, because I feel it's my duty to, yeah, sure, I have it easy, but I'm hardcore, and I'm mouthy, and I'm not repressed at all. I will tell you exactly what I want when I want it, but not everybody's built like me. And there's a lot more fragile female artists out there who won't get the opportunities to be heard because they will break under the weight of that kind of bullshit.
They're going to throw something at me, but this is a perfect time. One last question, now that we're alone. Would you marry me? It's not going to be easy. I know you're married. I know all these other things are going on in your life. No, you're incredible, and
well, thank you.
You're super cool, but super intelligent about art and why you do it. That inspires me because.
Oh, Robert, shucks.
About doing this series is I ask and invite humbly people that we admire from a distance, but to have you here and to see inside your artistic taste is a gift.
Well, you're very sweet, and I'm very honoured to be here. And it's been a great honour for me to talk to your students and talk to some of our fans. And I'm very grateful to you inviting me here.
We'll see you again, I hope.
And the only one last thing I'd like to say is what I think is incredible about what you're doing, seeing as you've blown smoke up my ass. I think if there are any students here that are studying film or want to be directors, this kind of thing I think is really helpful.